Welcome back to Quiet Franklin. I'm here today with author William C. Rhoden and my panel talking about Bill's controversial new book, $40 Million Slaves. In the book, Mr. Rhoden shows that even though many African-American athletes are paid millions of dollars, they're still subject to the plantation mentality, which harkens back to the days of slavery. Joining us right now to weigh in on the issue is Tim Wise, an anti-racism educator and author of the 2005 book, White Like Me. Tim, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate it. You've heard what these guys had to say. What are your thoughts? What's the first thing that jumps out of your mind based on what you've heard so far?
Well, you know, first of all, as a white man, I tend to not associate anything or try to make anything equivalent to slavery. It's not really my place. It's like, as a Jewish man, when folks say, you know, somebody's the next Hitler.
Well, Joe just finished doing that for quite a few minutes.
You know, as a Jewish man, when folks say somebody's the next Hitler, I tend to get a little upset about that, too. But what I will say is this. I think the book has a lot of validity. I think the analogy is true in the sense that money does not buy freedom if you don't actually have the ability to speak your mind. And historically, we know that black athletes who have spoken their mind in a way that white America didn't like have been slapped down for it in spite of the money. Having said that, here's what I would want to add. I want to caution, as a white person who sort of knows my people, quote unquote, pretty well, and the way we think about race, when we say that black athletes with a lot of money have this additional extra burden to uplift the community, I don't want us to hear that as white folks now are off the hook and we don't have to make institutional change. Because although it may be true and there may be validity to it, I think we have to remember every year $120 billion worth of income is being lost in black communities. And it's not because Michael Jordan didn't pitch in, and it's not because Tiger Woods didn't pitch in. That's because of discrimination against black folks in the labor force every year right now. So we've got to have a systemic analysis that looks at the root of the problem, the system that creates that.
Which is?
White racism.
Yeah, which is a system of institutionalized racism, past and present. That doesn't mean that folks ought not help themselves. Self-help and community help, collective help is important. But we also know, just like the house slave should have been down with the field slave to overthrow slavery, whether they were or not, slavery needed to be abolished. And abolitionists, white, black, and otherwise, needed to be part of that
Mr. Mowbray, what do you say to that, sir? Somebody up here who shares your hue, shares your ethnicity, clearly disagrees with every single word that you just said a few minutes ago. What is your response to that?
Look, the fact is racism, of course, still exists, but I think it's less of the overt kind than it used to be, and it's more about expectations, looking at someone, if they have melanin, having different expectations just because they have melanin in their skin. They're darker, and so they say, well, okay, someone's supposed to act a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way, or have certain responsibilities back to the community, which is what we're talking about here today. That's, I think, the real problem. That's where the racism comes in.
But $120 billion is $120 billion. Folks don't care whether you meant it or not. Folks don't care whether you call them a name or not. That's $120 billion a year that's being taken out of the community.
Bill, I'm going to go to you because I want you to really crystallize what this book is about. Before we continue forward with this discussion, I want you to talk to our viewing audience out here. What exactly were you trying to accomplish with this book?
Well, it's multi-level. It's a lot of stuff. But the first thing...
Simplify it as best you can for me.
Best I can. I mean, it's number one, it's a history lesson. It's an American history lesson. And it began with, I was talking to a junior high school class a few years ago, and at the end of it, this young black girl said, Mr. Rhoden, who was the first white athlete to integrate the NBA? Now, think of that question. She asked me, who was the first white athlete to integrate the NBA? Well, what that told me is that we've lost a couple generations of our kids in terms of history, just not understanding history. So the first thing, this book is an American history lesson because, in particular, a lot of our athletes, we got to go back to begin. How did we get here? See, once you understand the struggles that people got to get from point A to Z, now all of a sudden, this debate about, well, do I have a responsibility? I mean, every ethnic group in the United States has had some cross to bear. Our cross was, we were the only ethnic group that came here against our will. All right? Couldn't work, frozen out the economy. We're behind. We're behind economically. So when you talk about Michael Jordan or me...
Yes, I was getting ready to bring up Michael Jordan because you brought up him in your book as well. But go ahead.
Whether you're talking about you or me or a sister who's a nurse or whatever, where I'm coming from is that we all have a responsibility to move the ball forward. Okay? That's just... Sometimes it's hard, it's difficult. So I'm not saying I want athletes to do more. I'm just saying, just join.
But what
just
about
join,
what
join
Armstrong points to? What Armstrong says is that it's racist to assume that because this athlete is black, that he has an inherent responsibility to conduct himself in a certain way, or to take that mantle on his shoulders, so to speak. I don't want to speak. Armstrong, you do a better job of speaking for yourself than me. But basically, to paraphrase where you were coming from, that's what I'm interpreting from him. Why is it incumbent upon a black athlete to go to that extra level, that go that extra mile?
Once you understand the history, and you go back and you read what Jackie Robinson had to do, what Joe Louis had to do, what Isaac Murphy had. Once you understand the history of struggle, you're right. The majority of people in our community, the majority of people kind of just sat on the sideline. There's always a core of people who kept pushing, one promised land after the other. So you really have a choice. You can, listen, people died and marched. Dr. King died to give you the right to be neutral, if you want to be neutral. I choose not to be neutral. That's just not my nature. And the more I just choose not to do.
Go ahead, Armstrong.
I believe that these athletes are very successful. I think there's something we should celebrate and something we should be proud of. I listened to Tim talk about his white guilt, and everybody wants to study the poor black people, with black people's systemic racism. I will tell you this: if racism was utterly removed from America, washed away, there will still be substantial struggles. Because the problem that lies with any community when there's absentee fatherhood, when kids are dropping out of high school, when 50% of them are in the penal system, when there's no value system, they don't understand the importance of learning, when they don't have self-respect, respect for themselves and less respect for women. Anytime something like that is amiss, you're going to have serious social problems, and you cannot ignore that.
The problem is, if racism were eradicated and dealt with, the black community would have $120 or more billion a year.
And
they could build their own schools, their own hospitals. They could do all of that.
What are you basing? Armstrong is asking, what are you basing?
The $120 billion was a study in the mid-'90s from the Urban Institute. There have been other studies. Andrew Bremer, former Undersecretary of the Commerce, member of the Federal Reserve Board, has talked about those same numbers. And the reason I'm upset has nothing to do with white guilt. I told Armstrong that 9 years ago when we debated. He still hadn't learned it. What I will tell you is that $120 billion that black folks lose has an economic impact on me and white folks as well, because it has an overall impact in productivity and economic growth. That hurts my family.
Dr. Leonard Moore, I'm going to you. Go ahead, man.
I think part of the issue that we need to deal with is the fact that as African-American athletes grow in stature, African-American professionals and African-American mentors we don't have access to them anymore. So if Jordan would not have surrounded himself with David Falk and Phil Knight, then some older brothers, maybe William Graves or John Johnson from Ebony, would have told him, there's no way that Abe Poland is going to give you control of that team when you retire.
But what's wrong with Michael Jordan hiring a white agent if this guy is competent, gets the job done, makes him money? Michael Jordan could still make enough money. I mean, look at Michael Jordan right now. He's in Charlotte, okay? Fred Whitfield is his man. He's running the organization. I mean, you might have somebody representing Michael Jordan and making money for Michael Jordan, but at the same time, Michael Jordan has employed a few brothers.
Why tear down these success stories, man?
No, and we're not. We're saying, everybody's free to do whatever. I mean, that's not the issue. And in fact, the issue with Michael was not what he's doing now, but everything he could have done when he was.
What could he have done?
What could he have done? You encumbered him with these expectations.
Michael Jordan could have done a lot.
Listen, there was a mayoral. There's a small point.
I'm gonna come to you in a second, Doc. Go ahead, Bill.
Small point. There was a mayoral. There was a senatorial election. The mayor of Charlotte was running for against Jesse Helms.
Harvey Gantt.
Harvey Gantt
was running against Jesse
And Michael Jordan didn't support Harvey Gantt in his race against Jesse Helms.
I don't know what he did, but publicly, when all Michael had to do was publicly embrace Harvey Gantt.
He wanted to stay out of politics. How about that?
Well,
he didn't stay out of politics when it came to Bill Bradley now. Yeah. He endorsed Bill Bradley as president, Armstrong.
He said everybody buys his shoes.
No, he said no.
He's talking about the marketplace.
No, you know what he said?
What did he say?
Republicans buy sneakers too.
That means everybody buys his shoes.
No, he said Republicans buy sneakers too. Okay. And Michael will be the first to tell you, no, that's specific.
I can point to entertainers, I can point to athletes, I can point to people all over the public square who decide not to engage in politics precisely because it's divisive.
Give me some examples.
Why do we have expectations of Michael Jordan that he should have to do this simply because he's black?
Because if Michael Jordan, to play the devil's advocate here, the bottom line is that if he's a member of that community, which somebody like Tim Wise would say are members of the disenfranchised, the fact is, it seems that some people would say, there's an inherent obligation that you have to help uplift your race, because it's it's because of the pioneers that came before you that enabled you to be MJ.
Why do you take
Right, but what happens to MJ if he becomes a divisive figure, say 15, 20 years ago? He undercuts his own base. He no longer has the same kind of advertising prowess. Let's say his theory was correct, and I don't know. We won't know because it didn't happen. But let's say that had happened. In the long term, he would have had less power, less influence in society, and he would have ended up hobbling himself over that.
Dr. Moore, go ahead, Dr. Moore.
The issue is that Jordan has not made an impact on society. He's made an impression, but not an impact. You know, we talk about Allen Iverson a lot, but Allen Iverson told Reebok that he wanted them to keep his shoes under $100. Chris Webber did the same thing, and now I see Air Jordans being sold. You got about 2 pair now for $300. All Jordan had to tell Phil Knight was, hey, man, bring down the price of my shoes because they cause a lot of disturbance in the black community. He chose not to do that. So in my book, Jordan is very political, just political on the wrong stuff.
Armstrong, go ahead.
My point is this. Look, I think Mr. Rhoden's book is an excellent book. I've read the book from cover to cover. And I don't think this is what his book is about. His book is more about a value system, the fact that some in instances they're irresponsible with their money and they don't make the most of their money. And I think that's the part of his book. I don't think your book is about maligning these success stories. Everybody in the world is watching it. Why are we taking our best and brightest, maligning them? What does it say about the least among us? If we don't have heroes in the law.
Right, let me tell you what the book is about.
Tell us.
But not only is it about that, but it's also positive. I'm saying
it is positive.
It's positive, but what I'm saying, I want to take it to one more level. That, there are a lot of, and I'll get back to this, I'm not even talking about people who are mismanaging money. I don't even talk about that. I'm saying in 2006, there is so much potential power in this juncture of our existence. Athletes need to work together to maximize it. They're banks, hospitals, things like that. Also, I think that we really underuse athletes as leaders in our community. And that's because historically...
Maybe because a lot of them ain't educated in this day and time. That might be a reason.
And historically...
that's a very good point.
Go ahead.
Oh, my goodness.
Go ahead. Hold on, Joe. Hold on. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, wow.
Historically, our problem with athletes is that we have treated athletes kind of as our dumb blondes. In other words, all we want to do is kind of be symbolic heroes. In other words, Joe Louis, you just knocked the guy out, and you don't have to say anything because you're doing something, you're knocking guys out for the race. Jackie, you're hitting home runs for the race and all that. I'm just saying now the standard, what we need from them in 2006, the 21st century, is a lot greater than that. We need
Tim,
more.
Go ahead, Tim.
I mean, I was just going to say that, again, getting back to this issue, it's not an either or of whether or not folks who are in marginalized and oppressed and discriminated against communities ought to help themselves. The black community in this country has a proud history of that because they knew that white folks were not going to, by and large, step up and fix those problems. Having said that, though, we as a society have to keep our eye on the bigger picture, which is the system that creates greed, whether it's in a black athlete, a white athlete, or anything else, is the fundamental problem. And to expect more, not that he's doing that, but to expect more of the black athlete than the society expects of all of us, I think is putting the cart before the horse.
Go ahead, Bill.
And sort of the end game to the book, too, and I think this is what's more of a cautionary tone to black athletes, is that this isn't going to last forever. The history of black athletes in America from the 18th century onwards, whenever they become powerful, whether it's Major Taylor in cycling, whether it's Fleetwood Walker in baseball, there's a knee-jerk reaction in society to change the rules and eliminate them.
So are you now saying they are powerful? Because that seems like a contradiction.
What's that?
Are you now saying they are powerful? What do you say?
That the black athlete is powerful? That's what you're asking?
No, because the rules get changed on them. They're not that powerful.
Are they powerful?
Are they powerful?
Are they powerful?
Potentially. They're powerful. What I'm saying, listen clear. What I'm saying is that this juncture of time where athletes are, black athletes are 70% of the NBA, NFL, the clock is ticking on that. That's not going to last much longer. So all the stuff we're talking about what can they do, if we're not careful, if we're not diligent, we're going to be having a conversation 30 years from now where it's going to be like an encyclopedia. Well, wow, once upon a time, black athletes was 6%.
Hold on, Joe. Especially with the globalization for the sport. Listen, I'm not going anywhere, Joe. This is Stephen A. Smith. Quite frankly, I'm in the house with an exceptional panel talking about $40 million slave, talking about the black athlete, slave's mentality. William C. Rhoden, the author. We're talking about all of that right here on Quite Frankly. We'll be back with my panel in a minute.